All right, today we're going to talk about a really fascinating Supreme Court case out of Nepal that completely rewrote the rules on marriage. And it all started with a family dispute that, believe it or not, exposed this massive flaw in the legal system. We're talking about one simple question that judges, well, they couldn't agree on the answer for years.
So let's just put it out there. One husband, two wives. How long does that first wife actually have to file a case? Is it a few months? Or can she wait forever, for years, even decades? And for the longest time, nobody really knew. The answer was so unclear that you had courts giving completely opposite rulings. It created this huge mess and a ton of uncertainty in Nepal's legal system.
So what does it take to finally get an answer? Well, in this case, it took a real-life family drama that went all the way to the top, to the Supreme Court. And at the heart of it all are two people, Chanda Roka and her husband Sanjeev Roka. Their story, their case, it literally became the ultimate test for Nepal's entire bigamy law.
Okay, so let's break down how this all happened. In early 2006, Sanjeev goes ahead and marries his second wife, Usha. Now get this, almost 2 years pass, they even go and officially register the marriage. It's not until the middle of 2008, so a full 2.5 years after that second wedding, that his first wife, Chanda, finally files a complaint with the police. And that delay, that gap in time, that is everything. The entire legal battle is going to hinge on that one detail. And this is where you start to get legal whiplash. Seriously. At the first stop, the district court, the verdict is guilty. Sanjeev even admitted to it, so they sentenced him to a year in prison and a fine. Case closed, right? Nope. The case goes up to the appellate court, and they just toss it out. The whole thing. The reason? Super simple. Chanda, the first wife, just waited too long to file. So think about that. You've got two different courts looking at the exact same set of facts and coming to completely opposite conclusions. This is what blew the lid off the problem and kicked off a huge legal debate across the entire country.
Okay, let's hit pause on the Roka family for just a second and zoom out, because their situation, as crazy as it sounds, was not a one-off. This same confusion was playing out in courtrooms all over Nepal, and it all came down to one teeny, tiny, ambiguous phrase in the law. And here it is. This is the phrase that caused all the trouble. The law says a complaint has to be filed within 3 months of the date of knowledge. Okay, seems clear enough. But whose knowledge? That's the million-dollar question. Does that 3-month clock start ticking the second the first wife finds out? Or does it only start when the state, the police, the prosecutor, gets officially told about it? The law just didn't say. And this little bit of ambiguity created a massive problem. I mean, even the Supreme Court itself couldn't decide. They had issued totally conflicting rulings in the past. On one hand, you had the Deepak Pandey precedent, which said the clock starts when the state finds out. This meant a case could be filed way, way later. But then you had the Kamal Chapakayan precedent, which said the complete opposite, that the victim has to act fast. So imagine you're a judge. You've got two conflicting roles from the highest court in the land. You could basically just pick whichever one you liked better. The result? Total chaos and zero predictability. So, to finally put an end to all this chaos, the Roka case got kicked up to what's called an extended full bench of the Supreme Court. Think of it like calling in the big guns. It's a larger panel of judges, and their whole job is to settle these super controversial legal questions and create one single rule that everyone in the country has to follow from then on.
And so here they were, faced with that same fundamental question that had been tearing the judiciary apart for years. It all came down to this. When does that 3-month clock really start ticking?
So you had two very different arguments in front of the court. On one side, you have the state. Their argument was, look, bigamy is a crime against society. The government is the one prosecuting it. So the clock shouldn't start until we, the government, are officially informed. The first wife, she's really just an informant. But then the defense came back and said, no, bigamy is a deeply personal crime. The first wife is the direct victim here. And the law shouldn't just be this weapon she can keep in her back pocket and pull out years down the line, maybe just because they had a family fight.
And after hearing both sides, the court made its decision. And it was decisive. They ruled that the clock starts ticking the moment the victim knows. The countdown begins as soon as the first spouse finds out about the second marriage. Period. Okay, so why? Why did they land on that side of the argument? Well, their reasoning is really interesting because it digs into the very nature of what this crime is and what responsibility the person most affected by it has. The court basically defined bigamy as a victim-based crime. Sure, the state is the one that prosecutes it, but at its heart, it's an offense against a specific person. The judge's logic was that when a man marries a second time, it's the first wife who's really getting hurt. Her personal life, her property rights, her legal standing, all of it is directly impacted. She is the primary victim.
And they summed up their whole philosophy with this really powerful old legal saying: the law helps those who are vigilant, not those who sleep on their rights. I mean, that says it all, right? The court was making it crystal clear. If you want justice, you have to be proactive about it. You can't just find out your rights have been violated and then sit on that information for years, expecting the system to jump into action whenever you finally feel like it.
So they laid out their rationale in 4 clear steps. First, the victim has a duty to act. Simple as that. Second, having a strict time limit stops the law from being used as a weapon. And they even pointed to the Roka case itself, suggesting that the complaint looked like it was filed as an afterthought, maybe after some other family fight. Third, you need stability. The law has to provide some finality, some closure. You can't have families living under this cloud of legal uncertainty forever. And finally, look, the legislature put that 3-month limit in the law for a reason. If you just let people file whenever, then that law becomes totally meaningless.
Now, it's important to note this wasn't a slam-dunk unanimous decision. There was a dissenting judge, and he argued pretty forcefully that the court was getting it wrong. He believed that the older ruling, the Deepak Pandey one, was the right call, that bigamy is a crime against society. And he also made a point about judicial discipline, basically saying, hey, we made a ruling before, we should stick to it.
But in the end, the majority won out, and their opinion is now the law of the land. It really did create a whole new reality for marriage law in Nepal. So what does this all mean going forward? What are the biggest takeaways here?
Well, the single biggest impact is right here: simplicity, certainty. Out of all that chaos and confusion, the court created one single uniform rule for the entire country. Years of legal arguments, conflicting verdicts, all of it over. Now there's just one way to interpret the law. So this is the new reality of Nepal's bigamy law. It's pretty straightforward. First, there's that one clear rule we just talked about. The 3-month clock starts when the first spouse finds out about the second marriage. That's it. Second, this means urgency is everything. Victims can't just wait around anymore. They have to act, and they have to act fast. And third, and this is huge, you now have legal predictability. Lawyers, judges, regular citizens, everyone knows exactly how the law is going to be applied. It brings a level of fairness and consistency that just wasn't there before.
And all of this leaves us with one final big question to think about. The court's decision really forces a choice, doesn't it? It prioritizes things like social stability and stopping people from misusing the law. But it does that at the expense of giving a victim an unlimited amount of time to seek justice. So the question is, did they strike the right balance here? Is this the best way to handle it? Well, that's a debate that I'm sure is far from over.